Imagine this. You're at the absolute peak of your career. You're a fan favorite, a household name, starring in two of the biggest shows on television. Everything is going up, and then, practically overnight, you're just gone. No farewell tour, no big announcement, nothing. We're going to dive into the really shocking and honestly confusing story of an actor's sudden exit, and how this whole thing kicked off with just a single anonymous post online.
So what on earth could make a star at the top of his game just walk away from everything? This wasn't some quiet, planned retirement. Nope, this was a messy public spectacle. A dizzying spiral of accusations, then retractions, that left pretty much everyone's heads spinning. So let's try to make some sense of it all.
And just to be clear, we're not talking about a couple of guest spots here. These were major, starring roles on huge network shows. The fact that it happened so abruptly, with zero official explanation, left everybody asking the exact same question. What in the world just happened?
So, the fuse for this explosion wasn't lit at some flashy press conference. It all started in the quieter, and maybe more chaotic, corners of an online forum. It was just one anonymous post that set off a media firestorm that would totally engulf a star's career.
I mean, that title alone is a huge shot across the bow. This anonymous person claimed they had proof that would completely shatter the actor's squeaky clean public image. It was a massive claim, and they promised they had the receipts to back it all up.
And the so-called proof? Well, it was exactly what you might expect in this day and age. Screenshots, lots and lots of them. We're talking direct messages and chats from KakaoTalk, which, if you don't know, is a massive messaging app in South Korea. And the messages, supposedly from the actor, were sexually explicit. All of a sudden, this wasn't just a vague rumor anymore. It looked like it was backed by digital evidence, and the public reaction was, as you can imagine, immediate and intense.
While the actor's agency, they did not hesitate. They came out swinging, promising to sue for defamation. This was a clear sign that this wasn't just going to be a battle in the court of public opinion anymore. It was about to become a legal fight. And that threat of a lawsuit, well, it's a really key part of what happened next.
And then, just as that fire was absolutely raging, someone basically threw a giant bucket of water on it. The original accuser, the very person who started this whole thing, posted a pretty shocking apology that seemed to just douse the flames completely.
In a formal written apology, the accuser specifically stated they weren't paid off or coerced in any way. They were, in their own words, taking back everything they had said. For anyone following this wild story, this really looked like a clear, final ending to the whole thing.
So, case closed, right? You got a false accusation, a full apology, a clear statement that everything was fabricated. It really seemed like the story was over. But in this saga, nothing is ever what it seems. Because what happened next is what makes this story so incredibly baffling. You know that apology that was supposed to be the final word? Yeah, it was about to be torn to shreds.
Just a few days after seemingly ending the entire controversy, that same individual came back online with what they called their final statement. And this post didn't just clarify a few little points. No, it completely upended the previous apology and changed the entire narrative all over again.
And here is the bombshell. The accuser now claimed that the apology was a lie forced out of them because they were scared. The threat of being sued, of being financially ruined, that's what they said pushed them to retract their original story.
So now the story had completely flipped again. The accuser was insistent. The apology was fake, the screenshots were 100% real, and no, they didn't use AI to cook them up. But then they added this strange little twist. They said they didn't want to take it any further. So where in the world did that leave everyone?
When you lay it out like this, the contradiction is just staggering. First, a confession that everything was a lie. Then, a complete retraction of that confession, now claiming it was all made under duress. It's a classic he said, she said, then she said something totally different situation. How is anyone supposed to know what to believe?
This whole thing is just a tangled mess of conflicting claims. So let's try to untangle it a bit, just by looking at the timeline of how this all actually went down.
When you map it out, you can really see the incredible roller coaster ride this story took. You have an accusation, then the threat of a lawsuit, which leads to a full retraction. But then that retraction itself gets retracted. It's just a perfect, confusing loop of contradiction.
So, after all of that, we're left with, well, pretty much nothing but questions. An actor's career's in tatters, which is a very real-world consequence of all this online drama.
But as for the actual truth, we have two completely different opposing stories, and really no way of knowing which one, if either, is real. It's a pretty stark reminder of the power of an anonymous accusation and the absolute chaos that can follow.
This whole saga really leaves us with a difficult and, frankly, unsettling question for our times. When digital proof is so easy to create, but also so easy to disown, how do we ever really get to the truth of a story? In a world of screenshots and online mobs, this story just goes to show you how fragile a career, and maybe even the truth itself, can be.